Kia ora, everyone. I've got one of the best people for the job in a time of crisis right now. That's Andy Ross to talk through whatever possibilities, ideas. Oh yeah, Modern Pirate. Here it is. That might be going through your head right now. Andy, strange times. You just took me over with this iPad life. Your computer's crashed. It's the Matrix being a glitch. Yeah, you've taken me over to that Ferium behind you. Why is the Feria a protector for you?
Oh, I did that. That was about 10 years ago. I did that. I just put a few wings on him up there and did a self-portrait. But it just goes back to a time when I had an amazing interaction with one of my best mates, my longest mates, Josh. And he told me a story about him and magic mushrooms and fairy life and good and bad fairies, like the Brian Froud books that kids love. And I thought I'd do my own take on it. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, if anyone wants to hear that story and some incredible connections, and you touched on it last time you were here, some of the deep and intense things that have happened in your life, go and listen to Jack Rowland's podcast. I think it was about 22. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was 21 or 22. I gave a pretty in-depth rundown of that interaction. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mate, the world's gone to hell in a handbasket. We started talking this morning because last night shit came bubbling up for me. What have you been feeling? You've still been able to work.
I'm one of the lucky ones, mate.
That must be weird.
It's very weird, especially working in Melbourne City at the moment. It's a bit of a ghost town. Interesting interactions with the way that they've shut certain things down and not shut other things down, and even trying to work on a job site with, up to 150, sometimes 200 people on a job site, and trying to get people up 30 or 40 floors in an alley mac on the outside of the building to and fro, and police out the front of job sites fining people for having their smoko less than 1.5 meters away from each other, and no traffic on the roads. And I think the only positive that I've taken out of it, well, I've taken a couple out, is one of them is I'm actually working. So that puts me ahead of the curve as far as being one of the lucky ones. But no traffic cops. I mean, no parking meter cops. So you can park in a 1 hour zone all day right out the front of work and not have to worry about getting a fine. But yeah, it's interesting times living in the city with people looking at you like you're going to give them a disease just by looking at them. And yeah, it's interesting times, mate.
Mate, have you started wearing a buff to work or a mask or anything like that?
No, look, I haven't really been doing too much different. I mean, immune support is the main thing for me, and as long as I'm taking my bone broth and eating a good diet and still exercising, and I feel like I'm in a pretty good place. And I don't necessarily, I don't know, it's an interesting interaction when you do face people with face masks. And yeah, I'm of two minds of it, because I'm of two minds of am I protecting myself or am I protecting other people?
Other people.
Yeah, if I'm protecting other people, then I think my job site should be shut down. I think everything should be shut down. I shouldn't be allowed to go into a lift with another person. I shouldn't be allowed to work in another room with another person. So yeah, it's varying degrees of what do I do to keep responsible. And so I've just been trying to take the stairs when I go anywhere at work and not interact and just get in and get out. And yeah, I'm lucky that there's no walls on my building or something like that. So I'm up, 15 floors with no walls on the building and nobody about. Basically, they've limited the number of plumbers and electricians and all those sorts of things down to 4 or 5 people per team. And then they've also limited the number of people per floor on that building. So I'm of the mindset of like, well, I'm not going to take the lift. I'm just going to walk up the 12 stories to get into my job, and that's just going to keep me a little bit fitter and a little bit more on point for when all this stuff does sort of calm down, if it does.
Yeah, that That was what was real weird about my job in that sort of, what did we have? It was basically a week. We were sort of at level 2, and it was like, if you're over 70, stay home. No bastard listen to that. And, we were sterilising everything, washing hands. And then eventually we got a little cover on our slit lamp, but I was still touching eyes. I was still getting in people's space.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get right up close and personal.
Yeah, and it was like, I wish I had a mask. I wish I had some gloves. Then I would have needed about 13 masks a day, 13 sets of gloves a day, maybe more sets of gloves, depending on what I did. And then when it comes to going back, I was talking with my mum and dad the other day, and I was like, theoretically, we could do a pretty good job without going into that space, but we wouldn't be doing a complete job. So, yeah, and like, my young brother was like, "Oh, people need to see," and I was like, "Well, in theory, not really. It's only got to a point right now where it's bad enough for the person that they want to come in, and so going a few more months without, living with what they're living probably isn't a priority." And it eventually got to the point where, especially if someone was over 70, I was quite blunt with them to try and get across the severity of what's going on, because that's the thing. If they're showing up, they're obviously not understanding the severity. And I was just basically like, "Why have you come in to see me today?" Not in a like, "What can I do for you?" way. We're kind of like, what was so important that you've come to see me, who's having like 13 interactions a day, and being young, fit and healthy is potentially asymptomatic. It's all these things that people just really didn't consider. And that was like the magnitude of it. Like, we were probably 2 weeks behind where we could have been. And it seems that we're doing a good job, but that sort of, it almost needed us to go, right, suckers, this is the severity, take this on board. And there's still people out there in denial about this whole thing. But yeah, it's probably a good thing that we're in lockdown, but then it's also like, shit, we're just over a fortnight in, and it's like, well, where do we go now? What happens now? What's the plan now? It's all pretty weird.
Yeah, what stage 6? What stage 5? What stage recovery? What stage build back up to where we were before? Especially with the numbers flattening and all that sort of stuff. It's a bizarro time. So
yeah, and it's like, you guys there in Victoria are kind of like what Sweden's trying, and it's like, oh, who freaking knows if that's right or wrong or what. And I respect the fact that you guys are able to work in the situation. I think it's like, it's manageable, and that's the sort of mindset we need to start taking now. It's like, right, we need to implement social distancing. In my case, we need to implement PPE for the people we're seeing, not for us. And maybe everybody that comes in puts on a mask, we wear a mask. It's just, masks are normal in our practice, and we keep how we had it off, where we had our dispensing area roped off, and it was like one person in there at a time. Whatever anybody touches gets wiped down. There's that distancing at the reception. We maybe allocate one workstation per person, so there's not interaction with workstations. Like, it's all these things that start to bubble up and ideas in your head, but when your country and your prime minister aren't letting you move ahead, it's just, you're in this weird limbo state.
Yeah, and I think I was one of those people that have been in denial a little bit as well, because I mean, you know that probably people who are listening probably definitely don't know, but when it went from stage 3 to stage 4 here, I decided that I'd take 6 days off work. I could see the writing on the wall, and I jetted off to Western Victoria to go and spend a bit of time on a large property with a couple of blokes who, lovely invitation to go out there and to go hunting with them. So I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to get out if it comes to stage 4. So I just rang the boss and I was like, look, I'm a little bit worried about this. And I just told him that my mental health was more important than us getting the job done. So I took a runner out to, 4.5 hours out to Western Victoria to try and chase some fallow around a 10,000 hectare property. And just to clear my mind before, I could see the writing on the wall. I could see that we were going to get locked down for more than 2 weeks. It's obviously going to be more than 4 weeks, probably going to be more than whatever, but I just needed that mental clarity. And then since I went out there, that was an amazing time. And then I just dropped all of the research into it and the looking at it and the watching the news and the getting on the internet and listening to stuff. And I just dropped all of that. And I came back really quite positive about the time that I've been out there. And then since I've come back, I've tried to remove myself from that as much as possible and just try and live as normally as I can. And I mean, I'm a bit of a hermit as it is. I've got my little place here and my studio apartment, and I can shoot 20 meters in my house and all of that stuff. So I've just pushed it aside. And it's only been in the last few days when my computer's actually crashed and I can't make artwork. And, I can't obviously go and shoot down at my archery club and all of those things that I'm really like, oh, this is how the other half has been living for the last 2 weeks. And that just creates its own mental shift and how to process and how to move forwards. And am I doing the right thing on this front when I go to the shops, or am I, so many questions come into play. And I mean, missing those moments of just being able to hug a mate if you see him at the shop, or, it's intense. So I tried to run away from it a little bit, but the reality of it is that now I've got 7 days off and I'm like, no computer, no going to the club to shoot. I can only shoot 20 meters inside. I don't have a bow press here. There's only a certain amount of tuning my bow that I can do in my house, and then what's next? So I'm really been in that state of like, oh man, this is how other people have been living for the last 2 weeks, and I've been really lucky to go bush before it all went sideways. So
yeah, man. I guess you could start re-nailing that heel flip.
Yeah, that's right. I do see all these Instagram posts of skateboarders doing tricks inside, and I feel for the people who live downstairs from them in their apartments. Yeah, bang, bang, bang. If anyone's lived in anything over a 2-story house, they know that the shit that's coming from upstairs is absolutely pisses you off. So,
oh. Man, you said the space, and I'm so lucky. There's 650 hectares of space here, but even that is becoming really bizarre. Like I've been wandering around the hills trying to get rabbits with the bow, and I shot the Easter bunny last night. Thankfully, I don't think it was the Easter bunny, because my daughter's been chasing around the Easter bunny on Easter Friday. They need to get their holidays right. But
and you gutted it, and there were no eggs in there.
Yeah. No, but it's like I'm out the back, walking the hills. The sun's there. There's mist. There's rain. There's stags roaring. There's wild deer walking around, and it's just the most removed and zen little spot. But it's temporary, and it's also not being able to be shared, and that's mostly why I try and record it and like try. That's like the cool thing about social media, is like you try overlap the bubbles, if you will, and like try. It's like kind of escapism, but it's the opposite of it. It's just like really immersion. Like I said, when I clicked this Zoom call into being full screen, it's like, right, let's get immersed in this. But then you come back and you see someone's post, or you hear someone talk about the conspiracies, or we have had the radio on, we've got Spotify on now, you know, and every hour there's bloody, oh, COVID-19 update this, and you're like, oh, what the heck? This is the human existence is being played with right now. You know, are you starting, you know, like you said, 7 days off now, day one, are you starting to find those things of like, you know, where are we in this world?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that stuff for a bit now. It's, I suppose for me, where am I, and what do I see to be real and true? And that, I mean, when I walk around a job site at work, there's 5 different radio stations on, and so you can walk from one COVID update to another COVID update to another emergency warning, and so on and so forth, which is just breeding fear in people or keeping people under some sort of subdued or oppressed mind state. I feel that I think that the news has possibly got a bit to answer for as far as fear mongering goes and people's depression levels. And I don't hear them being too positive about anything. So I think that that's going to play on the depression of people across the board. And it actually makes me feel really, really, really lucky to be in the position that I'm in. And yeah, it's playing out in many different ways across many different worlds. And when you say full immersion, I've been sitting here on my tablet since my computer broke down, trying to figure out, like I said to you yesterday, just on our little Insta chat, that I've been watching lots of stag roar videos from New Zealand and tar hunting videos of New Zealand, and it just pulls on the heartstrings of, oh my God, when can I go back there? When can I go back to New Zealand and put some time on the ground? And then it's like, well, when can I go back to my own backyard and put some time on the ground in the high country? And or can I go, you know, I've had these amazing landowners send me, in inverted commas, work orders if I want to leave Melbourne to go out and #work on their farms, which really is a covert meaning for, do you want to come out and try and kill some deer on my property? But as far as the social mindset goes, and then what will my friends think of me driving 4 hours to Western Victoria to go and /work on a farm and go through 3 different communities on my way to get there, or drive 2 hours to the high country to another friend's property who's quite happy to have me stay on there, because there'll be no interaction between me and the landowner. I can go down the back, I can hunt, I can do my thing, I can stay on a massive property and not actually interact. But then I've got the judgment of, well, I've got X amount of friends stuck inside that aren't allowed to move. Some of them who've come back from overseas who are in isolation, other people who can't get out of their house, they're not working. And what's that going to do for their mindset if I play the game of, I need to go to work? And is that helping any communities? Is that putting other communities in danger? And then that's just a mind fuck all of its own. Because for me, it's like my immune system and it comes up to a certain level of selfishness on my behalf, because I'm like, well, the thing that means the most to me is to be in the bush. And the thing that's going to do the best for my immune system is sunshine, fresh air, walking, chasing deer around the forest. But am I putting other people's lives at risk if I don't know that I've got this thing, and then I move into a community or go into a service station or go to get food or go to a chemist on the way? And then it's just this big mind play of, am I going to cop resistance from people? Am I taking the piss? Am I being selfish? And so all of these things just play out in my mind to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm just going to stay home. So that, you know, it's a challenging thing.
Yeah, and the same for us. You say about inverted commas working. We could inverted commas peace manage those deer up the back. It's like,
yeah, that's right.
But yeah, exactly that. It comes to this massive moral dilemma, and you know, right now we're lucky that we don't need it, and But again, the question starts to come on: how long are we going to be doing this for, and will there be a time where we do need it? And again, then are you selfish? Like so many other people need it more than you.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like we're, as a world and as a tribe and as a community, and like you say, your friends and people that are worse off than you, you'd love to give that to them, and I guess it also on the flip side starts to speak to when this is all over, or reflecting back on how you lived. You know, why when you harvest something you want to give it to other people, and could you have given more to people and shared as well, like sitting down and having meals with people that you love and resonate with and vibe with, like is such it can be 2 hours of your life that's just this higher plane of energy, and it's like, yeah, those are the things that are starting to go, how that's important. That, like you say, you feel bad and feel selfish for your mates that are in a tougher place, but then it's also like, man, that's when can we get back to that?
Yeah. And I had to go around to Jack's house yesterday to pick up some stuff and drop off some stuff, and he sent me a message that said, I've left the keys under a shoe in a pot plant out the front. And I'm like, you're not going to open the door and let us inside? Or I haven't seen you since you got back from India. You've been tucked up in a house for 3 weeks, 2 weeks of that in quarantine, another week not allowed out. So I can't even give him a hug. I can't look him in the eye. I can't any of that stuff. And it's just like, hold on to your hats. And then, obviously, like a few things that we've shared over social media in the last few days of World Health Organization saying stuff like they're going to come around to people's houses and check if family members have COVID and take them out of houses and put them in social isolation, and no shaking hands, or it's frustrating. Very, very frustrating.
I haven't liked the World Health Organization for a while, particularly their vegan agenda.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, but they're doing themselves no favors in my books right now. Particularly the misinformation, or not misinformation, the authoritarian information, and then the fact that they change that information but don't acknowledge that, that they don't appear to have any humility to, and there's a lot of leaders around the place that act in this way. There's no humility in the fact that they got the message wrong. It's just kind of like, right, now do this. You're like, but you said no, do this. It's like, come down to the level. Who the fuck are you? Like, I guess it takes that sort of person to go into a job where you're preaching to the world. You've got to have some sort of egotistical bloody narcissism, I guess, to be like, hey, I want to be the president of the World Health Organization. Like, I want to tell people what to do. I want to be the authority. But man, it makes it tough to listen to people like that when that's their behavior.
For sure, especially when we haven't. Nobody in the world has voted them in.
No.
There's no selection criteria for who that person is. And if I'm going to follow a leader, like, I want that leader to put his hand up and say, I fucked up. I got it wrong. I got information that led us down this path, and that's not the information that we're going to roll with right now. And so, my bad. Let's all move forwards. We're changing tack here, and we're going to sail down another path. And if you can't put your hand up and say, my bad, or I fucked up, or this is by mistake, or we didn't understand X, Y, Z, and then come clean about what the reality of it is, then how can we trust? How can we trust that person?
Mm. That's what I think has been really epic about Peter Hotez, is right from the outset, he's like espoused the worst case scenario and said, I hope I'm wrong. This is where my fear and my considerations and my knowledge so far is taking me, and I'm probably wrong. He's tried to be extremely pragmatic. He's talked about openly, as someone that's developed vaccines and was part of the SARS staff, creating the vaccine from there, and acknowledged that their group and other groups in the States dropped the ball on that, and but maybe that work might help them move forward. But he's still pragmatic and realistic, saying 18 months for vaccines ambitious. And then on top of that, you get the likes of the New South Wales Premier being like, we can't go outside until we have a vaccine. You're like, just freaking hold your horses here. Like,
yeah,
you're nuts. You've that's not helping anyone. And maybe that's like I was saying about us as a country here in New Zealand needed to go into to shut down. We needed a reality check, a magnitude check, but it's so authoritarianism. And listening to Lex Fridman talk on Joe Rogan, he talked about this book, The Plague, and I saw Sarah Wilson. She must have a copy of it and is going to read that. And I was thinking, man, I want to listen to that. And
he's a brilliant human. That was an amazing episode.
Oh yeah. And you said to listen to Eric Weinstein as well. That was pretty bloody, not confronting, but powerful thoughts and
very powerful. Yeah.
But yeah, and the other one,
they're the sort of people that should be in charge,
and they're wise enough to go bugger that.
That's right. So would you.
Oh, I know. That's like stuff there for a job. And then the other one that I've been having the itch to read / download and listen to is 1984 for a long time, and man, even more so, there's just like scratching at my shoulder, being like, hey, listen to this utopian concept, because there might be something to overlay on what's happening right now, whether that helps you or saves you. But just again, it's like, man, I need to read / listen to 1984 by George Orwell, because
I reread it in December actually.
Yeah.
So before any of this was, bubbling to the surface, or just sort of bubbling to the surface, and it's just a slap in the face of wake up. Yeah. Especially the civil rights, that are just getting stripped.
Yeah, and that's why I think the US has, one, a massive problem on their hands, but two, it's interesting to see as a model. Like their whole doctrine is on independence, liberty, sovereignty, and human rights. And that's the reason why they've got a problem, because it's like, you can't tell a country what to do when the very thing that allows you to be president or senator is standing up for those people's rights. And to see them dance around that balance is really interesting, whereas us here in the more sort of Commonwealth style country, and you guys are slightly different in the fact that you guys got states with premiers and then a prime minister, which God knows where the hell he is. It's real weird for you guys to see that blend of US Commonwealth type leadership and us very much in a Commonwealth type leadership. We're very much about the crown and all those types of things, and do as you're told, and yes ma'am.
I mean, I think that we're really lucky here, and I think that you guys are probably even even more lucky than we are. I mean, New Zealand is such a special place. It's so removed and already has some pretty amazing quarantine laws as far as, bringing in grasses or bringing in animals and bringing in all of those things that are really checked out and scrutinised when you get to an airport. And Australia is so removed from the Western world, so to speak. I mean, that the population and the way that both of our countries run itself are quite similar, but quite removed in certain ways as well. But I think that the space that we have here and the freedoms that we have here, and same for you guys, is something to be really cherished at the moment. And thank God we live in these countries and not in America. And so it's almost like playing chess on a grand scale chessboard, but we've got to watch what the leaders, the Americas, the European nations, how they play chess, so that we can figure out how to play chess. But at the same time, we should just be playing our own game.
Mm. Yeah, I was talking with two guys from Italy last night, and one of them has actually had it. But again, this is probably what sparked me off last night. The guy clearly had it, and he went to the hospital in Italy. He's in Verona, and they wouldn't test him. And I was just like, what the hell? And you hear about
They wouldn't test him.
No. The tests are put aside for elderly in where he is. That was what he was told. And you heard that sort of story come out in New Zealand early on. That was the Friday before, so a week before. I heard a anecdote of a lady who has Airbnb and had international guests from Spain. Had clear symptoms, went to her doctor, rang her doctor, and they said they wouldn't test her, so she'd come into this guy's wife's pharmacy looking for help, and so she took her next door to the medical centre there. They rang the DHB to get the test authorised, and they wouldn't authorise the test, and then the doctor told this guy's wife that so far they hadn't been authorised to run any tests. And like looking at our numbers, and I'm a bit like you, I try not to go on and look very often, but we've been told that there's capacity for 6,000 tests a day, and we're running now at about 1,000 tests a day. And then of those 1,000 tests, only 2% are coming back positive, so which I don't know is good or bad. Like, I look at it in two ways. We've kind of like, no one's getting the virus much anymore, but that also means that nobody, we've only got about 250 people that have passed through the virus. And it's kind of like, well, and if we've only got just over 1,000 people who are exposed to it, well, that's bugger all. In our small population of just under 5 million, 1,000 people's bugger all. So what happens next? Where do we go next? Like I said, if vaccines are 18 months, 2 years, 5 years away, what the hell are we supposed to do for 5 years maybe?
Yeah, that's right. And if you increase the number of tests, you're obviously going to increase the number of people that are found to have it, which will then continue the curve of putting us in isolation, because you're running more tests and you're finding out more people have got it. So if you might have tested 1,000 people or 10,000 people, but once you test 100,000 people, then you're going to have a different amount of results. And so it's a challenging thing. I mean, I'm kind of really looking forward to listening to the episode that you just put up with Dr. Greg Emerson. And I mean, listening to those things with, like Peter Attia, and it's who to believe, who do you trust, who do you put your faith in, how do you decipher those numbers? So many different challenges to look at.
Yeah, what Greg and I, we didn't go into in the episode. We sort of said that there's so many rabbit holes that you can go down that they're almost not worth going down. Like, even when it comes to, and this is saying what Peter Attia is saying, that the numbers are still basically meaningless. We don't know how many people are exposed. We don't know how many people have been denied the test that are symptomatic. We don't know how many people died of something else but had the virus. We don't know how reliable the test is. Is the test super sensitive but actually unreliable? One of the things Greg was saying about is that we're made up of these viral DNA, and if the common cold's similar to it, and we've got this viral DNA in our system, are we going to be positive for the test but not actually have coronavirus? And it's just like, it's not worth it. It becomes not worth it.
Are those tests genetic corona tests, or are they COVID-19 tests? Because if people have had SARS or MERS before, then that's going to come up as a positive for corona if that is a generic test. And I mean, we're no doctors. You're probably closer to being a doctor than I am, but that's I'm just a tradie. But yeah, there's so many rabbit holes to look at, and if it's about not overwhelming our healthcare system, then there's a few other rabbit holes to go down. I heard a doctor talking this morning, and he was saying that if somebody comes into a hospital in America and gets tested,
you there?
is handing over money to these hospitals, which may increase the number exponentially from private or public hospitals, depending on how much cash they've got and who's running that hospital, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a financial system inside of that. And I don't know if we're running that in Australia or if New Zealand's doing that to increase the amount of funding to various hospitals, test dependent.
Yeah. You're saying now you're not a doctor, but you've got, you're an extremely smart person, and you've got siblings and family who are extremely smart. How much does that critical thinking, like you're talking about with Jack, you've looked into a couple of conspiracies and thought about them for a while, and then come out the other side and thought, actually, that was, I'm pessimistic. Well, no, that's not the right word. I'm skeptic about a lot of this stuff, and having discussions with family members that are science orientated and take everything with a grain of salt. How well does having scientific method in your life? You might be a tradie, but you've got that way of thinking. How do you think that prepares you for something like this, where there's so many rabbit holes, so many places that you could hang your hat on to just go, wait a minute, the data, the testing, the reasoning is not complete, and there's a lot of bias going on here. What how do you look at it?
Scientific method is repeatable, observable information. That's how you get science. You need to be able to repeat the observable over and over again to get the result that you need, and that becomes a scientific process. So at the moment, with the information changing every day or every other day in a 24-hour news cycle, then those repeatable, observable things are not repeatable, observable information as far as I'm concerned, because like what we said before, the World Health Organization changes what it says on a 48-hour cycle. So as a skeptic, I'd like to sit on both sides of the fence to try and figure out, all right, I'll look at the mainstream media, then I'll look at the conspiracy media, and then I'll look at the media that's in between, listen to the podcasts, listen to the doctors, listen to people that in my heart I feel like I could trust, because they're not trying to sell me anything and they're not funded by anything. So if you look on the mainstream media side of things and what they're telling us, then it's a fearful based thing to go down. And then if you look on the conspiracy theory side of things, the David Ickes, the Alex Jones, those sorts of rabbit holes, and for me to sit firmly on the fence and try and look down both corridors, if half the things that one side of the fence says is true, and then half the things on the other side of the fence that they say is true, both of those things don't add up to, for me, feeling like, oh, this is real or this information is true. So at the moment, I think there's a lot of frustration in the world from people looking at both of those things and going, well, what about the financial system? Who's in a power play? Who's in a power struggle? What about the health system? Are these results real? Are the information that we're getting through either of these two channels, are they real? And it's so hard to sort through the bullshit that it's almost at the point of just sitting on the fence and looking without even being able to make up an educated opinion on what's going on. And you know, my dad is a legitimate genius. He's in Mensa. My brother is a legitimate genius. He's in Mensa, like the top IQs in the world. And my brother is in England, total lockdown, only allowed to go outside once a day, civil liberties totally stripped. My dad is in Brisbane and he's retired and in the age bracket of being in that zone. He's had 2 strokes and 3 nervous breakdowns, and he's got, you know, high blood pressure and all these things. So it's a worrying situation. But he is of the opinion that he's still got a sense of humour. He's still taking a piss on it. He's got a great house. He can lock himself down and sit inside his house. My brother is sitting there with 3 kids inside the house and his wife, and they're all working from home. And he is taking the mainstream media's opinion and living in fear. So it's a challenging time for me because on one side, my dad's like, and on the other side, my brother's like, oh, fuck. So who's to say? Who's to say? And I mean, that when you look at the conspiracy side of things, if you look at the last 10 years of what Alex Jones has said or what David Icke has said or what some of these big-time conspiracy theorists have said, 50% of that stuff seems to have come true over the last 2 years. So where do we stand, and how does it all play out for the next 6 months to a year? I'd like to think that that if it is about our health and if it is about us having a strong and healthy immune system, then I think that our governments would be, it's a challenging thing to say, but going to the beach and going surfing and going bushwalking and being allowed into those state forests and into those national parks is the best thing that you can do for your mental health, which then supports your immune system. And being in the sun and being in the bush and fresh air and surfing and fishing and all of those things are immune and mental support builders. So, yeah.
What how I'm sort of framing it is that quite, you know, I'm about 90% that this was not nefarious, but then to take a little bit of introversion to how I'm responding to it, how I'm feeling, and what my desires are, what sort of courses of action I'd love to take, and then scaling that out to this corporate government, authoritarian level, and going, these are just people's responses. This is mirroring human nature, and people or organizations or entities trying to make the best of this that they possibly can, and also probably applying a lot of self-preservation towards it. It's easy to go into a state where you start looking after yourself, start getting selfish on it, and it's a to and fro between, is what we're doing right now in the best interest of everyone? Am I being sort of philanthropic? Am I being, you know, doing this unselfishly, or are we in survival mode? And so therefore we need to protect ourselves. And I guess that's what we're seeing from leaders and people who are in authoritarian states, is that they're not willing to admit stuff. They're wanting to carry on forward that and reinstate that we are the authority, we are the people that listen to, so keep listening to us. And I guess if you can, and talked about this with Greg, and I'll repeat it again. Dr. Paul Wood, who I've had on, who's a clinical psychologist, and he came out of prison. He was saying the other day, we need to just expand our bandwidth for compassion at the moment. We need to understand that people's behavior is not necessarily about this thing. It's about what they're internalizing. So if you are observing somebody being a little bit short, going off their rocker, just observe that and understand that that's not about you. It's not about the situation that they're in that's frustrating them. It's about what's going on deeper. And as I was saying to you this morning, I was finding myself getting frustrated very quickly all of a sudden. And then, like last night, I was listening to some music and ended up releasing a whole bunch of energy. And I wonder if that's now going to mean that I'm not reacting so much. So have a little bit of empathy and observation of yourself, and then just try and understand that none of this is about you, and it's not your fault or anything like that, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's their response. And I think that's where I find conspiracy theorists a little bit unjust in that they apply their narrative to the small aspects of what they're observing. And like you say, when you take a scientific method, they're like, is what you're saying repeatable? No, it's not. You're sort of cherry picking, and that's where you can't be in science. You can't cherry pick data to fit your narrative. The data is the data, and if that data is a hunk of shit, well, then you can't trust that either. So that's right. What I've been trying to remind myself.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can cherry pick anything and then just run with it.
And that's like the things that we've talked about in the past and got frustrated by, these documentaries.
Sorry, can I just interrupt before we go down that path? So one of my best mates is he's both my counsellor, but he's in mental health. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, he's in a position where he may lose his studio and his practice because he's got 5 or 6 people working in that studio. He's got naturopaths in there, Ayurvedic healers. He's got people that are paying his rent, and so he can only do his part, and not seeing people one-on-one. So he's seeing people on Skype and Zoom, and that way he can get his own personal income coming in, but he's not covering the rent from from the studio. But he was saying that he's been quite amazed with the people that he was seeing before coronavirus who had high levels of anxiety and high levels of depression, and would have those such high levels of anxiety that they may not be able to interact with people properly. So now, since that, he is saying that they feel absolutely normal. And they're saying to him that they're not feeling these issues of anxiety and depression and stuff that they were feeling before, because they've got across the board, everybody is now up to speed with what they've been dealing with over the past 10 years of their life. So they feel a certain level of normality. And I think that having empathy now, the people who haven't had that and now are feeling a certain level of anxiety, depression, wonder about what's going to happen in the future, will have a level of understanding what those people were going through before. So I think that the empathy that's going to come in mental health from people dealing with what they're dealing with will actually, fingers crossed, make people treat people a little bit differently to what they were treating them before, because it's a real thing. It's a real process of the anxiety of life and the fear of what's going to come and the depression of losing this and losing that. So I think that people coming together and feeling out each other's feelings and understanding that that's okay to be anxious or to be upset or whatever. And I thought that was really amazing for him to tell me that. It was like, oh, holy shit, you don't really think about those people who've been living with that for 10 years. And now they're just in a world of normality. Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I'm sure you know about it if you haven't read it, the book Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
Yeah.
If you want something to sort of make you feel good, that's one of the things that's shown in times of crisis that suicide rates, depression rates, anxiety rates drop. And maybe it is that everyone's vibe comes up to them and understands it, and the empathy grows and the community grows. But yeah, that, you know, there is going to be consequences to all this. This is not blanket rules, but yeah, that's maybe a silver lining if you're looking for some to this, is that as you know, our countries in the US, and I assume most of Western society has been challenged and suffering from this mental health issue. Maybe that's going to somewhat reprieve as we become focused on trying to adapt and move and execute out of this or through this as the time is at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you probably people that listen to this, you understand my previous mental health issues and things that I've been challenged with over the time. And for me to sit here and to really realise how lucky I am has made me just super positive and reevaluate where I am and what I'm going to do once this stuff's over. And I mean, I'm lucky I've got a 20-metre shooting lane right here in my backyard.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that. And if you're in a share house, which I'm not, I live by myself, there'd be no way that I could do that just in case somebody walked in front of whatever it was. So for me to reevaluate where I stand in my own mind and how lucky I am to have been able to get away for a week before all this and to still have work and to still have a roof over my head has just reinforced how bloody lucky I am and how lucky a lot of my friends are. So that's a positive. That's a real positive that I have to reinforce in my life every now and again to go, fuck, thank God. So, and also to look to the future, because this will change things and this will move around how we operate, and we don't know where that's going. And so, you know, I've got an opportunity pretty soon to be able to put down a deposit on land or on a house, and this is the time for me to think about where I want to be and where I want to create a future and how I want to go about that, and living in town or not living in town, or living in property, or being removed from people to live on a property where I can be more self-sustainable, and having a balance between that community that is around me at the moment and friendship groups, and even just going to the shop and talking to my local butcher and having a hello and those sorts of things, versus how far out of town do I want to go? Because if this rears its ugly head again and I've got an opportunity to not be in the city, then I won't be in the city. So yeah, it's definitely interesting times to look at the future, the past, the present, how people's mindsets are, how people play out this, and what they will do after this is all done to put things in process to make them more comfortable if this were to erupt again, and maybe it will.
Yeah. Something that sort of was reiterated to me, and I'm sure plenty of new parents out there have been told, is this too shall pass. And it's funny that, and that's what I sort of posted today. Joe Rogan put out about how someone from the CDC or something had said that, you know, basically we're not going to be able to hug each other anymore. And I'm sure it was a headline out of context, but I basically said bugger that. And the thing that I'm missing the most is actually those 3 or 4 or sometimes, you know, all night times where I was just holding my daughter while she was crying and trying to absorb that energy and bring that energy down and balance that energy so she could go to sleep, so I could go to sleep. And yeah, I do remember in the time really being present and going, I'm going to miss this one day. I'm going to miss holding her so tight and her being so dependent on me for my energy. And, you know, this too shall pass, but it's also going to grow you and create so much inside of you. And we to have, and that's why I always reiterate doing difficult things in your life, because the times when you suck, things suck, going through them just sort of flexes that muscle that, hey, I can tolerate things, I can build resilience, and it does prepare you for times like this where, you know, things can be shit. You can look at places to anchor yourself, places to ground yourself, and keep on going. And yeah, there's been plenty of posts out there about, you know, it's 2021 and we're, you know, great, they're connected, it's past, and we looked back on this, all the time that we had to reflect and rebalance and realign. Those are the things that you got to keep on reminding yourself about. Obviously, you've had work to go to, but what other practices have you had in your own home? Like you said, the shooting the bow. Or like, you took a deep breath just there before. What are you sort of doing?
I took a deep breath because I really feel for you, mate. Like when you sent me the message this morning that you'd had a challenging time yesterday because you're not seeing your kiddo, and you know that all those things. It just pulls at my heartstrings, and I'm like, oh, fuck no. Wish I could just reach out and give you a hug, mate. Like, yeah. I mean, I had my best mate come around and drop some stuff off the other day, and Gil, and he, I couldn't even give him a hug. I couldn't even give him a hug. We gave an elbow bump instead of a fucking fist bump. You know, when he's leaving to go back to his house up in the hills, which is more than half an hour away from me, and he thought, you know, I can't go and visit. And it's definitely those little things that make a difference. But I mean, like what you say about drive and challenge, and bring it back to that last question. When I went away with Maddie and Luke from Outback Broadheads the other week, I had an opportunity to spend time with two guys who probably between them have got 50 years worth of bow hunting experience under their belt, and to watch them tune their equipment and get everything flying straight, and you know, to shoot targets and shoot bows. And then I missed a deer at 43 meters on the last night of my hunt. We'd taken it in turns to be the shooter, and I was absolutely gutted. And last night out there, fallow deer everywhere, probably 25 of them around, low light. Made a mistake, shot over its back. Maybe it matrixed, maybe it didn't. I haven't seen the footage yet. But that 4.5 to 5 hour drive home just put a rocket underneath me of, fuck, can't do that. And I came home and I started shooting and tuned my bow and realised that my drop away rest was not dropping away properly. So I was actually spraying arrows everywhere, and I didn't realise with the time that we'd put into, you know, shooting out there that I had any issues. I thought maybe I was tired. I thought maybe a few different things, and you know, I was trying out a few different broadheads and really trying to listen to Luke. He's a wealth of information. That fella is unbelievable, and so is Matty. And yeah, that put a real rocket underneath me to be like, I can't believe I missed that 43 meters, and why did I miss, and how did I miss, and what am I going to do differently, and how am I going to get back out there? And that drive was just like, fuck, I haven't been putting 100 arrows through the target. I haven't been doing those things that I know to be my mental headspace clearer, be my little drive button. So I was really disappointed and really down in myself when I came home. And so that's given me a little rocket, a little drive. And I think there's going to be a few ways that people will come out of this situation. And I think half the people in the world will come out 20 kilos heavier, with a worse diet, with worse circulation and a worse immune system. And the other people will come out with, 10 kilos worth of more muscle on them, and with a better immune system and a better diet, with more drive to go out and get the job done. So it's really going to play on that situation. And, you see those memes of 2019, someone sitting on a couch with a beer, and then 2020, that's the responsible thing to do. And other people are like, oh, I really thought that my messy house was due to me being too busy, but now I just found out that I'm a slob. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out as far as people's drive and commitment and challenges and what they put into practice as far as goal setting goes. So, I mean, even me with goal setting, I've been such a hippie over the years that live in the moment and be in the now and live with the now. I've been so good at that over the years that I've forgotten to think about the future, and I've forgotten to put big long-term goals in place. I've put plenty of short-term ones in place, but I've been so busy living in the now that those goals for the future of, buying property or whatever it may be have been put on the back burner, and now's a good time to think about those things and really put them in place. So.
Yeah, that's what's been strange around the timing of this for me. Is it was about the raw mostly. People were like, "Well, where are you going for the raw?" Or, are you going to come hunting with us? Can you come? We should organise something like that. And for so long, this sort of happened around December. I was like, right, I've just got to get through March, and then I'll get back to you. And that was a quarter of the year, and it was like I had 2 weddings to go to, and it ended up being also a funeral to go to. And then it was like my lease ended. I moved out to my friend's farm, and Wednesday after that we're in lockdown, and it was like, holy shit, I got through this quarter, and now I'm in this open-ended, weird, strange position. And yeah, it has, I'm a bit like you, it sort of made me realize that. And same the lead up to that, I started talking with the coach around future stuff. What are the steps to take over the next 10 years, and what can you start to do financially, and start playing around. And like, now it's become this holding pattern between living now and then also thinking forward, and trying to go through 1,001 possibilities of what that might look like. And it's quite fun. It's I'm no artist, but is that what the initial creative process is like? It's like, here's a blank piece of paper, or in your case, a blank file on the computer. Let's just start putting some dots or figures, or looking through some inspiration, and then going from here and start layering. Do you see the creative process come for you, or friends that you're around starting to play out?
I do. I see procrastination playing out.
Looking at too many things, paralysis by analysis.
That's right. Oh, yeah, there's definitely a whole bunch of procrastination when it comes to me making artwork. And then you get your computer, the universe just pushes all your buttons at once, and the computer goes down and you can't make artwork anymore. So, yeah, but I mean, I look at you as a guiding light a lot of the time, and I look at you and I go, okay, so in the last year, you've packed up your shit in Australia, you've moved back to New Zealand, then you've moved house again, then you've had relationship meltdown, you're not with your daughter in a time of need. How many times have you moved in a year? 3 times. And you've changed. How many?
Changed jobs, but yeah, since I finished.
But so all of these things that.
Yeah. Yeah, since I finished,
so all these things that have been made
5 times.
Yeah, that's right. So the major stresses in people's lives are changing job and moving house. And you've done that multiplied by X amount of times. And you've still stayed strong. You've still been positive. You're still putting out a message of moving forwards, doing your exercise, getting your immune system, spreading love, spreading information, all of those things. And I'm just like, holy crap. Like, I don't know, it's a guiding light, and don't stop, because I think that the appreciation out there that you may not receive from people is a well-needed thing, that in a time like this, you going through 5 of the most stressful things that people go through in their lives and still being able to commit to your own well-being and your own drive and your own goals and all of those things is a beautiful thing to watch from the sides. So yeah, it's good. You're doing well, mate. Like, to keep your chin just above water and keep breathing.
Yeah, cheers, man. Yeah. Mate, I played water polo. trying to keep your head above water. Oh gosh, that's why my nose looks the way it does, mate.
I hate to see your ears then, mate.
Oh no, thankfully they have those plastic cups over the years. But yeah, some dude decided that he'd hold me under the water while he threw the ball down the other end of the pool, and then once that was over, knee me in the face.
Brutal game.
Oh, I don't know what it is. I think it's I played soccer for so long and was probably too aggressive for that game. I don't know. I used to get yellow carded a lot and penalised a lot. And my soccer coach nicknamed me Bulldozer for a while there because I just try to run through people. And we'd play this formation that was 4-5-1. Yeah, that's right, 4-5-1. And so basically they'd just kick me the ball up the field and I'd have the two defenders on my back, and then I'd have to try offlay it to the midfield coming past. It was like you're in the striker position, but you're playing the game with your back to the goal the whole time and not actually the one putting the ball in the net. But gosh, to then move into playing rugby and having played water polo, I was like, oh, this is what it's all about. And same with that, I coming from football, I was like, I'll play in the position where I kick the ball. But sitting out the back at fullback or winger, I was like, man, I just want to get in there and move bodies. And a mentor down south said, oh, go play loose forward. And I was like, oh man, this is home. This is getting your hands dirty, getting amongst it, getting smashed sometimes. But it's such a weird sport and a weird analogy for life. Like you say, water polo, holding your head above the water while you're having this massive fight for the ball, or rugby, just being in the mix of things. And
for me, skateboarding, fall off, get back up, get hurt, get back up, fall off, get back up. And when you do eventually make it, it feels so good. And you live with that for, a day, and then you're like, well, what's next? Fall off, get back up, fall off, get back up. And that's bow hunting as well. That's all of those things combined, is make a mistake, fall off, hurt yourself, get back up, call yourself an idiot, keep going.
So you're a street skater, right?
I was a bit of everything, yeah.
Yeah. What I've always looked at street skating, and it's like trying to create an obstacle, and I guess it speaks to your creativeness, like looking at a park or a landscape and going, what can we use here to create epicness? And for anybody that looks at a bunch of stairs and go, man, that's a bunch of stairs, but for a skateboarder, it's like there's a rail down the middle, there's a gap, there's potentially that flattening off bit in the middle where you could land on and then jump again. Then there's the side rail which you could slide down. It almost speaks to like seeing things in a fourth dimension. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And people would say, oh, how do I get from here to Melbourne Square? And skateboarders are like, oh, there's a 20-stair rail on the corner of that, and there's a ledge down the road from that. And they would actually say directions through skate spots. And I mean, hunters say direction through go up a gulch or go up a gully and turn right at the box gum or whatever. And so yeah, skateboarders, like, I know my way around the world through skate spots. And people would say, oh, I went to Bath in England and blah blah blah, and I'll be like, oh, I skated a rail right there that was a 9-stair rail that goes down to that Bath, and they're like, oh yeah, I know that spot. I've got no idea about street names, I've got no idea about anything. But yeah, I mean, it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy sport.
Yeah.
So
while we're in skateboarding, what was it like meeting Eamon and through Instagram, through bow hunting, and then realizing that you guys have both got this common trend in a previous / still present life?
Oh, it's great. It's really great. I wish I had more footage to be able to send him, but I was kind of the generation before digital. he's an amazing skateboarder. I've seen some amazing clips that he's just kind of thrown out as trash. And I mean, that was a really good connection. I think that we had a connection through also knowing Jeff Rowley, and I mean, he's the owner and creator of Civilware, the knife company, and he was a guiding light for me when I was younger. And just a few little connections there that were really great. That I think gave him the opportunity to open up a little bit more than maybe he has with some people. And yeah, super grateful for that. And yeah, there's been a couple of guys who have hit me up who I've skateboarded with over the years, who are bow hunters now. And yeah, it's quite interesting to see what paths those people in my past have gone down and what they're doing now in their lives. And I think that, like I said, the fall off, get back up mentality that a lot of skateboarders have has put them in a position for success in their life if they have managed to look at the reality of goal setting and falling and getting back up and put that into practice in a normal everyday life.
You brought up Jeff Rowley there. Is it Kuyu that he just had that video?
I think he's sponsored by Kuyu, but yeah, Civilware is the company that he owns.
Yeah. What, again, is it like that, seeing the world in a fourth dimension that allows a skateboarder, and same with Shane Dorian, like, to then pivot and describe the world with meaning and like connect to people on a different level? Like that Jeff Rowley video, I shared it a couple of times and you shared it as well, you know, talking about the essence of becoming a hunter. What do you think? What do you think it is, having that get up, carry on mindset and appreciation for the suck, appreciation for problem solving? Like, do you think that's where all that sort of ways to articulate it, you know? And the funny thing is, when you think about the meme of skateboarders, you know, there's a bad rap for them. It's like I saw a photo of a guy, I think it was on a beach in Dunedin, getting out of the water, and the policewoman standing there, and the surfer pulling the fingers, and the guy's a surfer from down home, and he was sort of saying that, you know, surfers and skateboarders are the scapegoats of society, and I guess we sort of see that with hunters as well. They become the scapegoats of society. Do you think that's another thing with it, that it's like we want to hang out around the fringe of it, and I suppose it's like surfers with their spots, it's like, and hunters with their spots, skateboarders
not
with
telling.
Not telling. Where's that, mate? What do you like to know? Like,
where's that pool? Where's that swimming pool? Not telling. Yeah. Yeah, we spent 8 hours emptying that swimming pool, and we're not going to tell you where it is.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it.
I think the suck, like any of those things, like surfing, you may be putting your life on the line. Like backpack hunting, you may be putting your life on the line. Skateboarding, you are putting your life on the line. So the suck and the pain and the stress of not being able to achieve your goal, and the pain and suffering, whether that be a physical pain and suffering or a mental pain and suffering, it's all encompassing in a similar thing to hunting, to surfing, to spearfishing, to skateboarding, that it's so interrelatable amongst it. Because I mean, you're going to suffer when you go into the high country. You're going to suffer when you go to New Zealand to go hunting. Mm-hmm. You're going to miss. You're going to injure yourself. You're going to find out whether you've got the mental fortitude to keep going. And I see skateboarders as some of the strongest, most mentally tough people going. And if you put, no offense to people who play soccer, but you see people get kicked in the shin and they fall over and take a dive, and then they're wheeled off the field and someone gets a yellow card or a red card, and then it's not a challenge. It's not you see someone fall off a skateboard 35 times going down a handrail, and they get back up, and it's just mental toughness that keeps them going. And any normal person would have called an ambulance and said, take me to hospital now. And that's a similar thing with hunting. It's you get bashed and beaten by Mother Nature, and it's those people that get back up and keep going that are the successful hunters.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was just all of a sudden.
And I'm not a successful hunter. I'm just good at getting back up.
Me neither, mate. That bunny I got yesterday. Oh shit! I think it was about 9 or 10th shot, and then I took a few more shots as well after that. So, you know, I don't know what my hit ratio is, but obviously I could control a few more variables. I could get out a rangefinder. I could figure out where my pins are, and you know, get a drop away rest that might improve my hit ratio. But
that'll definitely improve all of those things, especially the rangefinder. I've been telling you that for a year now.
Yeah, well, it's good fun. I think try to. You know, it's not quite trad bow hunting, but it's getting there. I don't know. The difficulty also makes the victory more sweet, I guess.
It's sweeter, yeah. Absolutely.
No, but what I was going to say is don't hold it against me. I got into rollerblading through watching Mighty Ducks. That was.
That's it. I've got to go, mate.
Oh, right.
I'm only joking.
Is it like
So
that?
you said rollerblading, I was like, that's it.
What about Mighty Ducks?
Yeah,
you too old.
Yeah, Mighty Ducks. Okay, we'll give you Mighty Ducks, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, but you're saying about, you know, falling over. I with my hip, when they gave me the X-ray, there was a broken tailbone on there, and I was like, oh, that could have been rollerblading. That could have been. We used to go into the bush next door and jump from one high tree down to another onto these vines, and sometimes you'd fall through. Or even as a kindy kid, we had these bouncy slides down from the fort, and you're supposed to just sort of jump on them and bounce down. But I was a mad dog and used to go from the back of the fort and run and try and land on the end of the slide and bounce off onto the ground, but missed it a few times. So yeah, that
I've also had a broken tailbone, and I know the pain of it.
Yeah,
I had a broken tailbone and a cracked skull with bruised brain and grey matter coming out the back of my head at the same accident.
Oh, who the heck was that? Was that Eric Weisstein talking about those people that opened up their skull themselves? That was Eric Weisstein.
Yeah, a lady who would drill a hole in her head to release the build-up of pressure in her skull. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's you, mate. That's why you're on a bigger level. You're bigger.
I don't know about that. No, look at my brain, and that'd probably be a cheese grater under a test. Yeah, I know I've got one because I've had a few CAT scans, so it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I always say to people when we pick up their retinal photo. I'm like, or the kids when I try to look in their eyes through the microscope. I'm like, I'm just trying to find your brain. Oh, no, there it is.
There it is.
No, you do have one. Good news. Your brain's connected.
I did have at one of the houses I lived on, I'd broken so many bones that I actually managed to make a full body skeleton out of X-rays. So I had a glass door, and I think there was only one, like the left shin was the only place that was missing, but I had the feet, I had hands, I had everything, and I had this entire body just laid out on a glass door that I had, and, you know, slide the door open and you can see through the light and you can see every bit of my body, and, you know, brain scan included up the top and all of that stuff. So I was like, mates would come around and they're just like, you're a fucking idiot.
the most awkward moment with your pelvis scan is the outline of your Johnson. That's always a fun one going into
absolutely
into the doctors, and it's like, so we're just looking at your hip here. You're like, yeah, let's just focus on the hip.
Yeah, well, try sitting on a plane for 16 hours flying back from Germany with a broken tailbone.
Yeah, I did. I re-broke it at Snowpark. So don't go over jumps at Snowpark, because when you mess it up, you break your tailbone, and then having to sit in an optometry stool and stand up and sit down was bad, like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, but yeah, did they give you an upgrade to lie down on that flight, or?
Oh, I got upgraded because I got a mate Apple who was in charge of the Etnies team at the time to put me onto. They put me in a wheelchair, and I had a neck brace on, and I had everything. So I got upgraded, and I had a full, like, pretty semi lie down bed, and I played the part so I could get upgraded, and yeah, it was pretty good. It was worthwhile.
So was that with the head fracture as well?
Yeah, with the head fracture too.
How were they about you flying home?
They pretty much told me that I shouldn't, but I'd rather earn the money, and I had no other option, and my plane ticket was available to come home, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going home, mate. So I had an opportunity to keep going with the Etnies team and go from Germany into France and continue on down to Marseille to the Bowl Riders Championships in Marseille, and they'd gotten word that there was gang activity around that bowl and around that harbour in Marseille, and maybe they weren't able to have the contest, and I wasn't going to be able to skateboard anyway, so I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to pull the pin and come home. So yeah, I mean, I do plenty of things that the doctors tell me not to, and maybe it wasn't a sensible idea, but I just wanted to come home.
Yeah. So at that stage, like you say, you've got this location to go shoot and compete at it, and you're worried about gangs. What was the vibe for skateboarding then? Was it still pretty underground? Was it like a competition? Wasn't like the X Games?
No, they didn't have the X Games. Well, they did have the X Games, but it was very small. And they had a World Championships in Germany at a place called Dortmund that was massive. It was in a massive arena. It was sponsored and run by S and Etnies and Titus and all these people. But Marseille is a special place. It's a pretty gang related place, and it's a public skate park where they have the Bowl Riders Championship there. And I don't think that I think that it's owned and operated by a particular gang. And at that time, I think there was 1 year or 2 years where they had it called off because I don't think that the organisers, maybe it was Vans, I'm not really sure, maybe it was S, but I don't think that they did the old, we'll pay you guys off enough money to allow us to come in here. And I think when this is 20 years ago now, but I'm pretty sure the story goes that when they went in there to set up all the marquees and all the bits and bobs, that there were a few guns pulled and a few words said, and there wasn't enough money changing hands. So yeah, it was an interesting time back then, and I was like, well, I'm on a plane, see you later. So yeah, it's a lot more underground, not as much money in it, and I was glad to have the opportunity to do that.
So what was the vibe? Obviously they flew to the other side of the world, but was it just about selling skateboards and shoes, or was the focus on getting on television networks and it was probably it was
photos and
YouTube.
Videos in magazines. Yeah. So it was photos, videos, magazines, and I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time. Like I have been with a few things in my life, and it was actually the Gold Coast had an X Games right on the beach there, and I won a couple of best tricks there, a couple of nights, and took a whole bunch of people that were from Etnies and S and these skate shoe companies up into the hills, and private bowls and private skate parks and public skate parks, and did some tours with people. And I was just in the right place at the right time when I got an invite to go. And there were definitely better people at skateboarding than me. And I just was like, well, I've got this opportunity and I'll go. And it's just more photo opportunities and videos and magazines. And, they would do a European tour, and then they would put out a complete European tour video. And it was interesting times.
Yeah, well, it's a weird,
grateful and lucky.
Yeah, weird world how those sorts of things happen. Like, man, it took you halfway around the world. How sucks that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I look back now and I'm like, fuck, there were so many people that deserved that more than me. And so
it's buzzy, like it's you, and I suppose you probably have some photos of it buried away somewhere. Is it kind of just like that's this other life?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really surreal to look back on those photos of you know, like it's the world championships of skateboarding. I don't even, they don't really even have that anymore. They've got, you know, competition circuits and stuff, but that was prime time in skateboarding history. And to be able to mingle and associate and sleep in bedrooms and hotels and travel with those people it's such a surreal thing that I look back on now and I'm like, how the hell did I manage that? Yeah, so I mean, it's a similar thing now in hunting and inside of artwork, that I've had opportunities that a lot of people don't have, and just to be grateful for them, and to get invitations from Matty Webb to go out to that property and spend time with Matty Webb and Luke from Outback Broadheads, or to get an opportunity to do artwork at a certain festival, or any of those things, that I just need to feel 100% grateful for all of those opportunities and try and make the most of them and learn from them and grow from them. And I've blown a whole bunch of opportunities in my skateboarding career through to laziness and drugs and not being in the right mind frame. But now is that time in my life where I'm like, I need to take the most out of all of those things and learn and grow and put everything together and move forwards. And so I think that this time that we're going through with Corona is a good time to be able to reflect on those things and try and move forward, or to make plans and not be as you know, living in the present, but just be thankful and grateful for all of those opportunities and try and make the most of the next ones that come up.
Yeah, man. And so, like, after doing the Hunting Camp Down Under podcast, I sort of clearly highlighted that, man, I had some imposter syndrome, and we talked about imposter syndrome, and I said, well,
yeah,
you know, what's it like? You know, you sit in your desk and you make all this work, and then someone says, you know, oh, you should do an exhibition, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you put it on the wall, and people show up, and they're there to see your work, and they want to hear about it from you, and you're just kind of like, mate, this is just something that I came out, and now it's on a wall, and now you want to hear the story behind it, and shit, maybe even want to buy it. Like, how, I sort of said to you, how surreal is that? And you're just like, well, I look around the community, and like I said, like people like Jack, and think, man, you know, those words you said there, like there's so many more people that are in your mind deserving of it, but for some weird, you know, instance, this is about me for some strange reason. Put that into your own words.
This podcast is a prime example. Podcasts in general are a prime example. And I'm like, what have I got to offer? Why have I been on 5 podcasts in the last 4 months? And what have I got to offer inside of that? And why are people asking me that? And there's so many more people out there that I want to hear from and I want to learn from, that then I judge, what have I got to offer? Same as the art front. What have I got to offer? What did I have to offer in skateboarding? And all of those questions that come up of why me or whatever, and just make the most of it and be appreciative and go forwards and try and help out whoever's around me. And I mean, I'm surrounded by a team of the most amazing artists that I call my mates, who I'm like, well, why did I get chosen for that gig and they didn't? Or why do I get you calling me up this morning going, do you want to do a podcast? Or all of those things that just become a self-judging, self-imposter syndrome. I become judge, jury and executioner in my own brain. And then, you know, the feedback comes down the road of people saying, oh, I really enjoyed that episode, or I got this out of it, or I got that out of it, which then reinforces, oh, maybe I am doing the right thing, or maybe me wearing my heart on my sleeve is what people want to hear, or whatever it is. So just be grateful, move forwards, fall off, get back up, take criticism. Don't be judge, jury and executioner in your own mind. Just move forwards the way you're moving. So it's a weird thing.
Yeah, I reckon saying g'day to it as well, eh? Like, also maybe being that that compassionate judge that gives yourself a second chance, that you know, lets you off without conviction. Might be the way to look at it, eh?
Yeah, man, it might let me off without conviction on the public side, but on the private side, I'll be like, fuck you, idiot. I'll take the pat on the back on one side and I'll punch myself in the head on the other side.
I guess you can kind of look at it like the people that, you know, might be getting arrested at the moment for being an idiot. You know, the police keep you in the cells for 3 or 4 days because it's taking a little bit longer to process, inverted commas if you're listening. But then you get in front of the judge and the judge calls you an idiot and what were you doing? And, you know, here's your self-deprecate, and then goes, right, oh, well, you know, it's unprecedented times and we don't really have facilities for this, so we're going to let you away with it this time. It might be that sort of situation going on in your head.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
Yeah. Time served.
Time served. I've been close to serving time a few times.
No, good, man. So people know where to find you. There's basically one place, yep. Living Spirit Design on Instagram.
I've signed out of Facebook, so don't try and find me there. It was a vapid pool of filth, so I got off it. So I'll live my artificial life through Instagram and see how we go.
Yeah, we won't talk about the hiss and the roar that you left Facebook with.
Yeah, let's not. You can find those comments somewhere online.
Mate, as we said, the world's a hell of a handbasket, but it's like conversations like this that, you know, and this is why I wanted to get you on, mate, because shit, I feel 1,000 times better having a conversation and connection with you and talking about what matters. But what would you sort of bookmark this conversation with?
Well, I bookmark it with, it's a virtual hug, mate. I wish I was there to actually give you a hug and have a walk around those hills with you and listen to some Reds roar, and that would be the best thing. So, you know, for me to wake up and hear that you gave yourself a little bit of a spell last night, and anything I can do to help, because I feel like, you know, you dropping podcasts and you being an inspiration to me, just to be able to be here and reflect that back at you and reflect that back to whoever's listening and try and put a bit of positive light. Let's do it. Let's move forwards together and give each other virtual hugs and really remember what's real, and what's real is the bush and it doesn't lie, and don't lie to each other, and make sure your friends are okay, and bookmark it. And if they call you and put their hand up and say, I need help, then give them a virtual hug or go around and see them or whatever, and let's be positive and get through this together.
Awesome. We'll press stop. Thanks again, Andy. This is awesome.
Thanks, mate.